Afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Let me recognize Bob Reiter, the president of the Chicago Federation of Labor. As you know, earlier today, we had a great event welcoming Vice President Kamala Harris to Chicago. I was very pleased that she accepted my invitation to come and visit one of our, I think, truly historic vaccination sites, which is the first of its kind in the nation, organized by labor, for labor. And as we saw when we kicked off the opening of this site, I think it was just a week ago, maybe a little bit longer, people were overjoyed to get the vaccine. The thing that we've experienced since vaccines first came to our city is doing a lot of work to make sure that we're educating people about the safety of the vaccine. And there's no better way to do that than peer-to-peer. You know, we can have celebrities, we can have elected officials, but when somebody that you know in your network, your family member, a colleague gets the vaccine, what we've seen is vaccine hesitancy starts to decrease over and over again. And I think the fact that so many union members are enthusiastically signing up to get the vaccine at Local 399 is a real testament to that. They really started with healthcare workers. And I want to give a shout out to SAU Healthcare, who really worked with us in partnership from day one to make sure that we were educating union members about why they should get the vaccine. And we started with the frontline healthcare workers and have built up from there. It's a great success already. Enthusiastic to keep supporting it. I got to give a shout out and thanks to Jewel Osco because they are the folks that are on the front lines there, actually putting shots in arms and doing really a terrific job. But this is exactly the kind of place that we need to have where we talk about equity. If you were had the benefit of being in the room today, what you saw was Chicago. Very diverse, hardworking union members there, and all doing it not only to save themselves, but to save their family, their parents, and their fellow colleagues as part of the union. So it was just a great opportunity for us to showcase what we've been doing in Chicago around vaccines and particularly around equity. So I want to thank Vice President Harris for coming here and really seeing what we're doing in Chicago. As the mayor of a city that is 59% Black and Latinx, it has been our priority to make sure that we're driving vaccines into communities that need them most. And thanks to this focus, we've been able to make sure that we are making significant progress on our mission to get vaccine into the arms of people all across the city. And I'm proud to say here that our equity focus is paying dividends. I want to also remark that today is the one-year anniversary of the Racial Equity Rapid Response Team. You'll remember that literally a year ago today in this room at this podium, I had the responsibility, humbling responsibility, to announce to Chicago and really to the nation that we were seeing Black folks in this city dying at 7 times the rate of every other demographic in our city as a result of COVID-19. It's a day that I will never forget as long as I live. But I knew that at that time that we couldn't just give that information out to members of the public. We had to come up with concrete solutions on how to address that. And that was the genesis of the Racial Equity Rapid Response Team. I had the honor of being with that group that is now a much larger table because we've not only focused on what's happening in Black Chicago, but also Brown Chicago. People talk about how we've been able to turn around our numbers from 18% Black and Latinx in December getting the vaccine to over 50% week after week. And it's because of tables like the Racial Equity Rapid Response Team that we set a year ago, and building on those authentic grassroots relationships that have served us well in educating people about the pandemic, bringing them into healthcare, getting testing resources out to communities that need them most, and then now more recently, the vaccine. It's those hard fought battles in the trenches of reaching people who need it most that are paying dividends now. So last Monday, we shifted to Phase 1C, which will open vaccination appointments to all essential workers and residents with underlying conditions. You heard today that the president has now moved up his timeline from May 1st to April 19 for all adults in the U.S. to be able to have access to the vaccine. We will meet that deadline. We need more vaccine from the federal government, but we're optimistic based upon conversations that opportunity will happen. And with that, let me turn it to Bob Reiter to say a few words, and then I'm going to invite Dr. Arwady to back cleanup, and then we'll be happy to answer your questions after that. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you, Mayor Lightfoot. What an exciting day to be able to bring so many folks who are essential workers into our vaccine clinic and get them vaccinated. So my name is Bob Reiter. I'm president of the Chicago Federation of Labor. The CFL represents 300 unions that in turn represent 500,000 working women and men in Chicago and Cook County. 2/3 of the union members who live and work in Chicago are people of color. And today, the vaccine clinic that we had reflected that diversity. We spend a lot of time working with our affiliate unions who have members that are in 1A, 1B, and 1C to make sure that the opportunities to be vaccinated are there. And I'd like to thank Mayor Lightfoot and Dr. Arwady for working with us to make sure these essential workers have that access. You know, working Chicago, like the mayor said, you look out into that room that we had today, and you're looking at people that are of Chicago, people who work construction, who clean our buildings, people who are in manufacturing, making the clothes that we wear. They were represented there today. And a lot of them have stayed working through this entire pandemic. I put the Chicago labor movement and working Chicagoans who may not necessarily be in a union but are part of the working class people who live and work in the city into two categories. The people who sacrifice their jobs and their careers in order for us to all to contain the community spread during this pandemic, and those essential workers that we all leaned on to make sure that our society continued to function and that we had the basic needs and necessities provided to us during this pandemic. And that's why when we moved to 1C last week, I was so excited that we launched this healthcare clinic. We are continuing to vaccinate people in the coming days and weeks in partnership with the city. And the more vaccine uptake and the more we all work to make sure that Chicagoans are vaccinated, the closer we'll get to being back to normal. And until then, wear your mask, wash your hands, and let's get back to work and have a post-pandemic recovery that we know we're all capable of. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be brief. It was really an honor to be able to share some of the good work that we are doing here on vaccination in Chicago today with the Vice President. So, two things were what we focused on. Number one, Chicago has been doing an amazing job on vaccine efficiency. What do we mean by efficiency? Does all of the vaccine that comes to our city get into arms? Where you look across the states, most states have about 70 to 80% of their vaccine into arms. Here in Chicago, we set a goal from the very first week of vaccination that 95% of our vaccine every single week would get off the shelf, out the door, to providers and to appointments. And we have hit that every single week. Secondly, we set a goal to do this quickly. We said we want within a week, 85% of our doses of vaccine being reported into arms and reported. Again, a pretty audacious goal, and we have hit that every week. And in fact, we've been hitting over 90% and even 95% of our vaccine efficiency goals each week. So they were pleased to hear about that because people have been calling and wanting to know, how are you moving so quickly? Now, if you saw my inbox, you would know that there are a lot of people here in Chicago still really wanting to get that vaccine. And I know what a struggle that's been for people excited to get it, and I want to see that demand. The only thing that has been holding us back there is just the amount of supply. I was pleased to see the president doubling down on asking all of the U.S. to make sure that vaccine is available by the 19th of April for all Americans. We had been discussing this possibility partly because we have been seeing cases being driven so much by that 18 to 29-year-old age group in Chicago, and thinking about, wanting to follow where that data is and push vaccine where it's most needed. The only hesitation has just been vaccine supply, and we are not seeing the huge increases, partly because of the Johnson & Johnson issues with manufacturing that came to play. But I remain confident. I think talking to the group this morning, they have made every commitment to keep building vaccine, and as we expand eligibility, I think we're going to have demand here for a long time. There are a lot of places in Illinois that have vaccine available at this point. We are still a ways from that here, but I am, again, demand is a good thing, and as supply comes here to meet that, we will absolutely be ready to do that. And the other reason that the Vice President came, and what the interest has been at the federal level, is this equity focus. As the mayor said, really having a focus on getting the majority of our first doses to Black and Latinx Chicagoans every week. It's not typical across the country, and it's thanks to the unions that we've been working with all along, essential workers. We made a plan. So in 1B, every single essential worker group that was prioritized by the CDC during phase 1B, Chicago Department of Public Health worked to make sure every one of those groups was prioritized, had dedicated vaccine. Even while we launched Protect Chicago Plus, the more neighborhood-based work that people are used to. And now that we're really into this home stretch of wanting to get people vaccinated really without restrictions, we're going to keep this equity focus in terms of bringing vaccine to where people are, using trusted messages, and build on the really strong infrastructure. We've got more than 620 providers here in Chicago ready and anxious to get vaccine. So I'm very confident that we will be continuing on the good path that we're on. If you look at folks over 18 plus, we now have more than 40% of Chicagoans have gotten at least that first dose. And more than 21% have gotten both doses. That doesn't yet mean, though, that we can let down our guard. And I appreciated already just the reminder that although vaccine is amazing, like this vaccine is performing in ways that are better than I ever expected, we've seen people, I think, here in some ways get a little too excited, think that we are beyond needing to do the masking and the social distancing. And I'm confident over these next few weeks, as more and more people get vaccinated, that we are going to get to a point where we are in a better place from a COVID standpoint. But we're at 5.1% positivity today. We're at almost 600 cases per day. And although those have broadly been concentrated in younger people, we are concerned and ask people, while we make progress on the vaccine, please keep doing the things that have gotten us this far. Thank you.
And now we're happy to take your questions. We have microphones on either side of the room, so just raise your hand, and here you go, right there.
Mayor, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Michelle Gallardo with ABC7. If you can just, we can talk a little bit more about this decision for the city to be in line with the administration's goal of opening up access to everybody by April the 19th. Was that part of your conversations with the Vice President today? And how did you guys approach it? Obviously, you need more supply, is what you're saying, to make that happen. What was she saying in that regard?
Well, we've obviously been thinking about this, as Dr. already said, for some time, and monitoring our progress on a daily, if not multiple time daily basis. We do want to be aligned with the president's objective, but understanding that we need more vaccine. And I want to be clear that when we open up on April 19th, that doesn't mean that very day everybody's going to get access to vaccine. I think Dr. Ward already has said multiple times leading up to this moment that when we make these announcements, there will be some lag. We want people to go and sign up when it's their turn, but given the supply of vaccine, it may be a few weeks or so before they get an appointment to be able to come in. So we just caution with folks to be patient, and in the meantime, to be diligent.
Hi, Mayor Eric Hong with ABC7. With young people, as we mentioned, driving the uptick in cases, why not move it to, say, Monday with the rest of the state of Illinois?
Well, again, that's something that we have thought about. But again, I don't like to create expectations that we can't meet. We feel like we're going to be in a better place with vaccine supply by then and be able to meet some of this need. But we've been cautious the whole time. And as you know, the state's guidelines allow local jurisdictions to be different, meaning more restrictive than the state. We've got to make sure that we're driving the vaccine to those areas that are most in need. We are increasing our timeline, or upping the timeline from what we'd initially anticipated. But there's a lot of messaging and marketing that goes into that, plus having logistics ready to take another surge of people in the vaccine queue. So there's some planning and time that really has to go into this. We can't just flip a switch. So we feel comfortable with the April 19th date. I don't know, Doctor, if you want to add any other thoughts to that.
I would just add that that May 1st was based on projections around when we thought we would likely have enough vaccine to not have as much frustrations for the folks with the underlying conditions and the other folks who are already eligible. But look, we're seeing cases in younger people. And so this has been, we follow the data, we follow the science, and it's about wanting to make shifts where we're able to. And so I do think it's the right thing from a science perspective. And we didn't know, obviously, that the president was going to announce this today, but we had already been discussing this timing and thinking about wanting to be clear with folks and open it up. But I also just am aware that vaccine supply does remain limited, and I have also had additional conversations with the IDPH, for example, and the state, and about really wanting to make sure that parts of the state that are harder hit from a case perspective and that are somewhat less supplied in terms of vaccination, that the Northeast is really prioritizing getting vaccine supply. And so I think as we are able to see some more of that happen and some more vaccine be directed to this part of the state, if not to Chicago directly, then, and we'd like to partner on things where we are doing a lot of workers, but only some are Chicago workers. We would like to do some more partnership there. And as long as we have vaccine supply, we are 100% in support of being able to move ahead.
I'm sorry, has the state pledged more vaccine to the Northeast part of the
So
state?
we've been in conversations about it, is what I can say. They recognize that there are, I believe, 80 counties in this state that have already been able to open to full availability because they have vaccine available. And less population, that's right. And so where you look at the counties that have not been able to do that, from a politics completely aside, from a public health perspective, you look and you see where are your areas that are less vaccinated or that need additional vaccine, or that you're seeing driving increases in cases, and that would be where you would want to push additional vaccine. So, I'm confident that they're looking at that too and wanting to obviously make sure that all the vaccine is being used across the state. So I am feeling optimistic, and we've been having good conversations about the need to work together to make sure that we can get this part of the state fully vaccinated. So that's part of the other conversation where we're feeling somewhat more confident about being able to move sooner. But we want to help people protect themselves, and the vaccine's the best way to do that.
I think we got there. Go ahead.
Okay, this question, thank you, Mayor. Alex Maragos from NBC5. A 2-year-old was shot in a car on Lakeshore Drive this morning. Do you have a reaction to that shooting? Police think it may be road rage. And also, what is your message about safety downtown as we get closer to summer and things start to open up more?
Well, obviously, anytime anyone is shot in Chicago, it's tragic, and particularly when it's a child. I believe, but the reports I have is that the child was actually 1 year old. Look, the information is very preliminary at this point, but it does appear to be a case of road rage. The detectives are actively investigating. They have witnesses and a suspect, at least one, in the area, and are actively pursuing the other car that was involved. So I don't want to say much more than that, but it's clearly tragic. I'll just leave it at that. It's mind-boggling to me that people carry guns in the way that they do, that they use them in the way that they do, and they use them in that way when children are in the immediate proximity. So we'll see what the investigation tells us about the further facts, but it's just a terrible tragedy.
In terms of downtown safety with people coming out?
You know, I wouldn't actually link the two together. I think it was coincidental that it happened where it happened. These were not two rival gangs, as my understanding, shooting at each other. This was simple but stupid road rage.
Hi, Mayor. Heather Sharon, WTTW. Yes. Can you tell me why the press availability was canceled at Pington Park, and does it indicate a widening breach between you and the governor because you did not appear today in public?
No. No, it has nothing to do with that. I mean, the governor and I may not agree on every policy issue, but he and I have worked very, very hard over the time that I've become mayor to make sure that we have a very good working relationship, and we do. The simple matter is I had to pull aside with the vice president, and the press conference started without me. So I suspected that folks might want to hear from me, so we decided to have this avail here at City Hall. So that's a simple fact.
So you didn't relocate this press conference because of the protesters at Pington Park?
No, as I said, my understanding from my staff as I got in a car finishing with the vice president is the press conference started with the two senators that were there.
So for at least a week, I've heard you and Dr. Arwady say that Chicago needs more vaccine that's now being sent to southern and rural Illinois. Why hasn't the governor agreed to do that, since you can see on any vaccine appointment map that there are green dots all over southern Illinois, but red dots in Chicago and Cook County?
Well, look, we have obviously been actively engaged with the state about the need up here in the northeast section. So it's not just Chicago, but it's suburban Cook, Lake County, and other counties up here. We have more population up here, so it's not a surprise that the need is going to be great in an area of the state where the population is the greatest. And we're continuing to advocate for where there's saturation in other parts of the state to use those precious resources to bring them here, and we hope that those conversations will in fact result in more vaccine coming to Chicago, suburban Cook, and the surrounding area. But we're going to keep doing what we can with the supply that we do have. Let's go over here, and then we'll come back to here.
Oh, no, not me.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm Aaron Gettinger.
Hyde Park Herald in the house.
Yeah, I'm here. Yep, you know it. I'm Aaron Gettinger. I've got two questions. On March 25th, AIDS Foundation Chicago and Howard Brown, this actually may be for Dr. Arwady, but it's addressed to you. They published an op-ed, not an op-ed, kind of an open letter demanding that CDPH and IDPH, but CDPH for this point, include and name all majority Black, Indigenous, and Latinx areas in Chicago as priorities for vaccine distribution immediately. At the protest today, Alderman Sigcho Lopez said that he was there to demand that he have a serious conversation about equity in the vaccination process with you. I didn't know if, are all of the majority Black and Latinx areas already open eligibility for United Center at this point? Didn't know if you had any response to that. I didn't know if you'd read the open letter from AIDS Foundation Chicago or Howard Brown, or if you could just discuss that.
Look, the bottom line here is we would love to be able to push vaccine in every single neighborhood, but we have a finite amount of vaccine. So from the very beginning, obviously, we focus on equity, and we focus specifically within that on areas of the city that have been hardest hit by case numbers and by deaths. We're using the science to guide our vaccine strategy as one would expect. If we had an unlimited amount of vaccine, it would be easier to do what some of these folks are urging. But when you've got a finite amount of vaccine, you've got to prioritize. And our prioritization, which I'm proud of, is focused on equity and getting it into the arms of those people who are most at risk of spread. And we've explained this over and over again. We're not going to be able to satisfy everyone, but I'm very confident in a strategy. That's why we've gone from having 18% vaccine uptake in December in Black and Brown Chicago to over 50% week after week. That's why we have significantly seen increases in the number of seniors 65 and up who are getting it. That's why we're starting to see case rates come down exponentially in Latinx Chicago because of this intentional work around equity. And I'm proud of the way in which we've managed this finite resources. And we'll open up more as we are able, given the amount of vaccine that we have. Dr. Arter, you want to chime in here?
I've got one more, but
Yeah, I would just add to that, why do we vaccinate? We vaccinate to prevent COVID, to prevent disease. And the very focused vaccination efforts that we've had through Protect Chicago Plus and through all the Protect Chicago have had the impact of erasing the inequities in COVID cases that we have seen in Chicago plague us for a year. COVID cases now look like Chicago when we look at race ethnicity, and that is a result of some pretty focused work and work with literally hundreds of community partners. So I get a lot of letters and I see a lot of people with comments, and I appreciate people's ideas on this. They had specifically suggested that we prioritize vaccine to people who self-identified as Black or Latinx, which is not something that we are set up. That's not something that is best public health practice. The best public health practice is really a focus around geography and where we are seeing cases spread, and so that's why we used the approach that we used. And I really am very proud of the results that we've had. And as we move ahead, we'll continue to use data in a way to drive vaccine where it's most needed.
And then one other one for the mayor. Did you read the Better Government Association's president and CEO's op-ed in the Tribune last week regarding the elected school board issue for CPS?
No.
Well, he's asking you to come out and say whether or not you still support an elected school board.
And I will when we're ready. I'm spending time actually talking to people like parents, other stakeholders. So that will happen on a timeline that makes sense, not the timeline that someone tries to dictate to me. Okay? Let's go over here to Amy.
Hi, Amy Jacobson, WIND. I have two questions, one for you and one for Dr. Awarde. At the last event, I asked Congressman Donnie Davis about that senseless shooting. Danny Davis, excuse me, I'm sorry. I didn't mean any disrespect there. About the senseless shooting of the 2-year-old, and he suggested ending gun manufacturing and gun confiscation. What is your response to that?
Well, as I said, in answer to the earlier question, I am continually amazed at the recklessness in which people brandish firearms in this country. City of Chicago, unfortunately, doesn't have a corner on that market. And it particularly grieves me when we see people using firearms when there are children in close proximity. As I understand it, this small child was in a car seat in the back of the car, and they were shooting going from that car and coming to that car. That doesn't make any sense to me. Someone once said to me, and I think it's right, that children are the product of the adult ecosystem around them. I just hope that we are smarter and more committed to making sure that we set the example for our children that we want them to follow. And getting upset over a traffic incident and whether you can merge or not, that would result in gunfire is an absurdity to me. So, yeah, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. I've made no secret of the fact that I favor background checks, universal background checks. Part of the reason that we have so much gun violence in the city of Chicago is you can go right over the border to Indiana, to Michigan, to Wisconsin, and buy military-grade weapon and any quality that you want if you got the money to be able to pay for it. We can't fight that fight alone. We need the federal government, and hopefully we will see some real, meaningful, reasonable gun reform at the federal level now that we have a president who understands the necessity of actually doing something and not just wringing their hands or ignoring this epidemic of gun violence that is crushing communities all over the country.
But do you feel
let me just finish if I can. You ask a question about which I have a lot of sentiment. We just need to do better as a country. We absolutely must. I respect the Second Amendment. I certainly expect law-abiding residents' ability to carry handguns with training and with background checks, but we don't have anything close to any sanity in gun regulation. More details will come out today, but the fact that so many people can get access to guns far easier than you can buy a pack of cigarettes or a six-pack of beer makes no sense when we know how dangerous firearms are, and particularly around children. Every single child in our city, in our state, in our country deserves to be able to grow up without the fear of coming outside on a warm spring day for fear of gun violence, or worse, being in their home where they feel like they're safe and having a gun come through the window or through the side of a wall. We have got to do a better job as a nation protecting our young people, our elders against gun violence, and it's got to start, in my opinion, with universal background checks. It also has to start with making sure that people who should never possess a handgun don't ever get one. The fact that you can be on a no-fly list and you can't actually sit on a plane, but that same person can get a gun, tell me that that makes any sense whatsoever. It doesn't. So a lot more needs to be done there.
And I have a question for Dr. Awardi, if I may. You had mentioned that there was 600 cases today. What are the hospitalizations like and ICU capacity? Because over the weekend, Dr. Rachel Rubin, who's working with Cook County, said that they might restore indoor dining bans again for a third round. Is that possible? And is it not just about cases now? I mean, because it used to be about hospitalizations and ICU capacity, but now everyone feels it's about cases where most of these people don't even have to be hospitalized.
So I'll try to keep this brief. There are a lot of things that we look at and have looked at throughout. It's never just been about cases. It's been about cases, hospitalizations, ICUs, deaths. It's been about where are those showing up. It's been about, are there pockets where you can control? Are there places that you've seen a lot go through, a large extended network versus new areas that are occurring? So, all of the data related to hospitalizations and ICU is on our website, chicago.gov/coronavirus. Broadly, we have seen small increases in hospitalizations and in ICUs. The good news is at this point, for cases, hospitalizations, and deaths, we've got nearly 60% of our folks over 65 have gotten at least that first dose of vaccine, and we got to get that number up. This is one of my, we really have to finish getting that group fully vaccinated. But we've seen cases and therefore sort of hospitalizations and then deaths really staying down in that group. And if we can protect a lot of the most vulnerable Chicagoans, by vulnerable I mean vulnerable to hospitalization and death, that is part of the decision making here. I will say, where you look at the epidemiology right now, it looks different than what we have seen in the whole year to this point. We are broadly seeing cases across the north side more than we are across the west side or the south side. The north side has been less hit by COVID overall, meaning there are more people with no natural immunity and more possibility for additional spread in that area. And we know that still not enough people are vaccinated to sort of keep up with that. We don't look the same as Michigan. Michigan is a big concern for me, where we look and see that in Michigan, we have seen cases go up to a point almost as high as they were for them back in November, December. They've seen hospitalizations very much follow suit. They're seeing deaths follow suit. They have clearly more cases of a couple of the variants. We have some of that here. here, probably not as large a percentage. And they're seeing children affected, which is one of the other reasons why we think that B117 variant may play a more important role. So their epidemiology does look different. And right at the moment, we're certainly watching this with concern. The mayor and I were just discussing this morning. But my hope is that with gatherings over Easter, Passover, et cetera, that people, especially younger people, were being careful, especially with those who were older who had underlying conditions. I am not concerned right now about seeing the health system get overwhelmed in the way that was a major concern for us early on, and then a significant concern even in November, December. But every case, right, does have the potential, especially as it gets into more vulnerable people, to turn into a hospitalization or even a death. And so we're balancing a lot here. I do want to remind people that outside is safer. And so where we made those expansions, we really said, try to move these things outside. We want to keep businesses supported where we can, but being able to do that now that there's warmer weather is going to be safer than further expansion at this point on the indoor setting. And we're going to see, assuming that things don't completely take off, my preference would be not to have to dial back, but if we start seeing this look like Michigan in terms of significant hospitalizations, more concerns there, and we had to make that decision, we definitely would.
All right, we're going to do two more from these two.
Okay, good afternoon, Madam Mayor.
Good afternoon, sir.
Let me do it in African way. You don't talk to mayor and sitting down in my culture. Sorry. Anyway, my name is Olawale Idris. I'm the publisher of Africa USA Today magazine online. Yes, Africa USA Today online. I'm so proud of you, Madam Mayor, what you're doing. I wish I could take this thing off. Yes, I'm so proud of what you're doing, not just because I'm black and you are black, with all due respect, but I wrote on my Facebook every day, giving you an accord about what you're doing.
Thank you, sir.
When you were elected, sorry, I didn't vote for you. I voted for the other candidate. I'm confessing.
Confession is good for the soul.
Amen to that. I mean, even though you were standing next to me at the WTTW during the election time, but I didn't really think much of it. But now you are surprising everybody, not just in Chicago, international arena.
I'll take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment. Thank you. So
okay.
Now, there are a large number of African community in not only in Chicago but in Illinois. I know after this meeting they're going to be calling me, Wale, what happened? What do you know? So what do I take back to them, especially with what happened between you and the Vice President, Kamala Harris? What was the progress? I mean, what can we take back to the African community? Because most of them, they are still kind of pessimistic about this vaccine. I took mine twice back in February, Moderna. And, the only thing I see is I eat a lot now. I eat more than I used to eat. But my question is, what should I take back to the African community in terms of caring for them?
So I appreciate the question. Look, I certainly understand the hesitancy of people about the vaccine, but I think what we've seen is that people who were once very hesitant are now becoming anxious to get the vaccine. And why? I think the why is because people are now seeing folks who look like them in their communities, in their families, in their network, as their work colleagues, actually getting the vaccine. And Bob and I were talking about this earlier today. Part of the beauty of the work that we've done with organized labor is your most trusted ambassador for the vaccine is somebody you know. So those union members who are talking to their colleagues about, yes, I got it, nope, no side effects, feeling pretty good, absolutely, I'm going back for my second shot. That kind of word of mouth is invaluable, more valuable than really anything else. So I think the word is the vaccines are safe. I think we've proven that. And just to be clear, we didn't just take the CDC's or the FDA's word on it. We organized a local team of experts who are themselves diverse that Dr. Arwady selected. They went through all of the scientific data and then came to a determination, both with Pfizer, Moderna, and now Johnson & Johnson. That gave me also added comfort that local folks were really scrutinizing the scientific data. In addition to that, each of these vaccines has had a pool of people that is really diverse as part of the vaccine trials, meaning this wasn't done on some other population and then interpreted and given to us. Black folks, brown folks, Asians, a whole diverse array of people that look like the population of the United States were part of the vaccine trials. So I feel very comfortable. And the last thing I'll say is this, my dear mother, 92 years old, I've been working on her. And I'm proud to say that she got her first shot recently. And I wouldn't encourage my own mother, someone who I love dearly, to get the vaccine if I didn't have confidence in its safety, and I do. So I think there's a lot that we can do to debunk the myths that are out there. I've heard everything under the sun, but I think the important thing is to get people access to the facts and then access to people that they know in their own social network to ask those questions. How'd you feel? Which one did you get? Where did you go? And when people start to hear that information, I think their comfort level just goes up and up.
All right, last one back here.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Mayor. This is Coco, a reporter from Sanavision. Last week, President Biden announced additional action to respond to anti-Asian violence. So during the conversation with the Vice President, have you talked about those and how Chicago makes sure all actions on federal and local government level to benefit every Asian American member in the community? Thank you.
Look, I think the president and the vice president have been 100% clear on this issue. There's a reason why after the horrible incident in Atlanta and suburban Atlanta, they went there to really lend their voice to all efforts in a call for against anti-Asian hate that we're unfortunately seeing rise in. Here in Chicago, immediately reached out to members of the Asian and Pacific Islander community, asked what they were seeing and what they were hearing, went to Chinatown, went up on Argyle, and made sure that in every area of the city where we see a concentration of Asian and Pacific Islander populations, that the local district commanders were in contact with local stakeholders, that there were increased patrols, and we're remaining diligent. But fundamentally, to me, what this is, we have to figure out a way to be able to disagree without shaming and blaming someone else. Unfortunately, we have a very checkered past in this country about that. I know that as a woman of color myself, which is all the more reason why we all have to stand in solidarity together and support each other. My view is if it's happening to you, it's happening to me. And I think as if we all feel that way, that we are brothers and sisters in this struggle for racial equity, then we're going to make progress because we're going to be making it together. We can't say I got mine and I'm good and you're on your own. That's not the way that we can move forward as a city or a state or a country. So we've got to stand together wherever we see hate. We've got to call it out. We've got to denounce it, and we've got to stand in support of our brothers and sisters who happen to be under siege at that moment, because the pendulum swings back. And I don't have the luxury as a woman of color thinking it's never going to happen to me. I know better. And why I need to reach out across divides, across race, to make sure that all of us are feeling love and support in the moments where we need it most.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Planning to hold the city council meeting on April 21st in person, even though some aldermen have expressed concerns that the city isn't ready and that it's not going to be safe for all of them.
Well, look, we're still having conversations with our friends in the city council, but it's my hope and expectation that we will be back in person. We may be in a hybrid. Look, you know this as well as I do. Check people's social media. They're out. And they're going out into their communities, and they're meeting with people. And the vaccine was offered up to aldermen and their staffs. So I know that some people have some concerns, and we have a plan to deal with that. But I think the vast majority of folks want to come back. They've been talking to me about it since last fall. And so I think we've got a pathway forward, but those conversations will continue, and we'll certainly give plenty of advance notice as to what we're going to be doing at the next next city council meeting, but I'm hoping it's going to be from Chambers.
All right,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.